Okay, the grip then, such a crucial part of the golf swing, not just in terms of how we control the motion of the club and the club face, but how you put your hands on over time will really influence how your body and swing adapt over time. So much so that even the best players in the world, like Scottie Scheffler here, is constantly really paying attention to his grip and quite methodical as to how his hands line up with the club face. So in this video, I'm going to take you through the nuts and bolts of the grip. We're going to get into it in detail, but then we're also going to give you a simple routine that will ensure that your grip is always in the right place. Okay, so here's a really key principle then. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the grip, why do we spend so much time on it and effort? Well, how we hold the club will affect how our wrists work and how we create some power, but will really influence how you control the club face. So if I asked you to put your hands on and twist them to the left with a straight club face, like so, and this is well worth doing, great to experience this. And let me ask you then to twist the club as far to the right as possible. And you can see I can really wrench it round. But if I then asked you to twist it to the left, you can see I am really restricted because my hands are already to the left. So we would call that a very weak grip. I can open the face loads, I can't close it. So you can imagine those guys and girls are going to hit the ball way right or create some funky things in their swing to try and get that club face back square. And of course, the opposite of that is also true. If, like some of my cricket playing students, they grip the club underneath like this, well, these guys can really wrench the club closed they can't really twist it this way. So through the ball, these guys are left trying to sort of keep the club face open and prevent it from turning in. We don't want either of those situations. We want our hands in a neutral position. We'll go through that in a moment, where I can rotate the club this way and that way and have full range of motion and a skill available to us to control the club face. Okay, let's get into it then. If this was a beginner lesson, day one, how to put our hands on the club, this is what it would look like. So first of all, the left hand, or for a right-hander, the top hand, the club wants to run from the middle joint of our index finger here, which hooks under, to this crease just above the little finger. That is to say, the hook of the forefinger, and it's going to run up to that crease just above our little finger. So the club will run like so. Okay, so that is applied like that. The fingers curl under. Now here's the really key part that often gets missed. I've now got to get my heel pad, so that's this bit, on top of the handle, so that when my hand closes over the top, my thumb is to the right side of the grip logo, but the middle of my wrist is at least over the middle of the handle. So let's take an anatomical reference there. In the middle of your wrist, about there is a dent. So I'll show you on my other wrist. For some it's bigger than others. I don't know if we can see that there. There's a little dent in the middle of the wrist between two, I think they're ligaments, and that's called the snuff box. Honestly, if you went to your doctor and you referenced the snuff box, he would know you're talking about that point in your wrist. So I would encourage you to get a little dot on your glove where that dent in your wrist is, because that's a really key checkpoint that's going to ensure the left hand goes on in the right place. So it's in the fingers, heel pad on top, snuff box on top, and very slightly to the right of the Golf Pride logo there. I wouldn't even bother referencing the knuckles. I know lots do. If you get that in the right place, you're in a good position. Now, before we move on to the right hand, this is a worthwhile check. That left hand definitely does not want to be in the palm. It's going to absolutely ruin your face control and sense of speed. So if the heel pad is on top, we should then be able to let go with the bottom three fingers and the thumb. And you can see how that is nicely trapped underneath the heel pad. And I'm in control of the club face. If it's slipping out, you've probably not got that heel pad over the top. So many people, when they're working with me on this and they get the heel pad over, they get the snuff box over, they can feel how the arm needs to kind of move over as well. And we create this structure of the lead arm. So then the bottom hand, now the trail hand, so right-handers for right-handed golfers, let's just understand this is not a fist full of bananas. We need to be not gripping it with our fist. It needs to be, if I took my right hand off the club, it would look like this. You can see there's a real kind of structure and shape to that. The club is run through more towards the fingertips, and the fingers curl under, and then the thumb closes over the top. And a really great checkpoint here is that the lifeline of your right hand, so that's here, needs to be where the left hand thumb kind of sits, and they really kind of fit snugly together. So if I lower my wrist down now until this thumb sits in that groove, that is a really nice, snug fit, almost as if that is how nature intended us to play golf. The right hand thumb sits over the top onto your trigger finger. So if my fingers are all together here, this finger takes a lot of the pressure in the golf swing on the downswing. So we just separate it, and you can see why that's called the trigger finger. So if I show you that again from underneath, you'll see there's a little separation, and that's our trigger finger. So the thumb sits over the top and just touches. Now, before we get into how the hands join together, just notice there is no gaps or holes in my grip there. There's no sort of saggy gaps where, you know, where gas could escape. So that's a really lovely reference I saw many years ago. Imagine you had a little canister of gas that you cracked in your grip. There would be no gas escaping at all from your fingers. We don't want any holes or gaps. That needs to be a really snug fit. Snuff box on top, right hand in the fingers, into the lifeline, thumb on top, and all is left to do is to join the hands together, or not. So this is, if you're just starting out, an absolutely fully orthodox grip. So we call that the baseball grip. And if that feels best to you, go with it. If, however, you can learn to sort of get comfortable with one of the next two options, they'd probably be preferable. So that is to say the overlapping grip. So I'm going to point this finger out, bring my hands together, and you can see the little finger sits in that groove. And that really puts the right hand in those end three fingers and gives us that fine control, almost like holding a pencil, which you can imagine if you held it in your fist, gives you like no control. So that's the overlapping grip. Or if I just point that finger out and the forefinger of the top hand, again, pull them together, that would be the overlapping grip, which is my preference, but I mean, it's just as, you know, it's no better than the last one. Key note on that though, is we don't want to jam the fingers together into the webbing. It's a fairly sort of loose interlocking. The most important part is the structure of the hands, not so much how they're linking together. Now, before we go on, it's all very well having an awesome grip. We've got to make sure that it lines up with the club face. So, you know, I could be sort of focusing on my grip here, but you can see the club face is turned in, and then I'd have to, oh, now I've got a strong grip. So having got your hands on, check that the front of the club here, so that, you know, the very front edge, not the top edge. So I've had this many times over the years. We're not looking at the top edge. That's a different angle. That very bottom edge, that needs to be vertical. So I remember teaching a builder once, and I said, what are you doing? And he's lining up with the brickwork on the driving range. So that front edge. So you get your grip on, and then just check that the front edge is vertical. Now you've got a great grip and great club face alignment. So that is how we initially put our hands on and with the key checkpoints. But you want to make that a little bit more fluid. You want to have some checkpoints, but not have to go through this really methodical process. So let's try and build that into a more course-friendly routine. I would always start with the club in my bottom hand, so my right hand way down the bottom, because I'm going to slide that up in a moment. The top hand then, to create the right shape to fit the hand in, I would actually do that before I start. So I would create this shape. You can see this sort of reverse C shape, as if I'm sort of leaning on a wall. Now I can just bring my hand into the club, and it's already in the right shape to fit the club. If we start with the hand sort of down and under in this shape, then I've got a lot of manipulating to do. So create the correct shape in your left hand. So a little bit of extension, we say, in the wrist when it kicks back. Plonk that on, snuff box on top, and now the trail hand can just slide together, interlock, and check the club face, and we're done. Again, might seem like a few bits to remember, but by the time you've done that 50 times, which is one practice session, it's left hand, slide together, right hand, check the club face. And then the last thing to do is just be mindful of grip tension. So we are trying to create a swinging motion. So a swinging motion is this. This is a 1 kilo Indian club. I know it looks like a bottle of water, but it's 1 kilo and I am swinging it, which is very different to manipulating and lifting and controlling. And the same thing with the club head, we need to be swinging. And for that to be in play in your golf motion, we need to be gripping it relatively loosely. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 out of 10 is really squeezing it and very controlling, we want to be about a 4. So it's not going to slip out of our hands. If we hit it off center, it's not going to wrench through our hands, but equally, it's loose enough so we're not getting tension all the way up through our arms and shoulders. And we can sense where that club face is, and you can make a smooth swooshing sound. You can hear that swoosh. If you haven't got the swoosh, you're probably not swinging the club head freely enough and very possibly too tight in the grip. So there we go. That's there. That is the full routine, and it took no time at all. Obviously, with a little bit of practice. Now, this channel is all about learning to play the game. So if you're just getting started, or a casual golfer, or maybe just trying to break 100 for the first time, you are in the right place. So please click subscribe, and I'll see you next time.